I gave my wife the divorce papers when I found out she was cheating on me. Now, she is trying to win me back. I work in repairing crashed cars, specifically on vehicles involved in train accidents. On September 25th, I ended up cutting my leg on a truck I was working on, which meant a trip to the emergency room. I got 5 stitches inside the leg and 34 stitches on the outside. It was quite bad. I was prescribed some strong painkillers, and there was no way I could drive home. So, I called my wife. There was no response. I called again 5 minutes later. Still, there was no answer. I called back, and once again, there was no answer. I sent her a text message. "Honey, respond. I need you." I called her again. There was no response. I sent more text messages, but nothing. After about an hour and a half, I got an Uber to take me home. As we turned onto my street, we saw my house, and there she was, standing at our door, kissing the general manager of the place where she works. I told the driver to stop. This was not a small kiss, but a deep, passionate one. She was supposed to be at work. I pulled out my phone, took a couple of pictures, and told the driver to keep driving. He took me back to work. I sat there in the break room for hours, with my head resting on the table, numb and heartbroken. When the painkiller's effect wore off, I headed home, sore from my leg and from everything going through my head. She was not at home when I arrived. She returned home a couple of hours later and acted very distant. Maybe it was guilt, maybe not, I don't know. I asked her how her day had gone, and she made up a story about work. I knew it was false. A week later, I learned for the first time that she hadn't worked on Fridays for the last 3 years. I had never used Reddit much, it was always there, but I had no real interest in it until then. I was looking for information on how to deal with infidelity and found this subreddit. It appeared along with some YouTube videos. So, I read a few things here, trying to figure out what the hell I should be doing right now. I was reading about the warning signs, and it was like, yeah, well, that describes it perfectly. Always on the phone, always sending text messages. For some reason, she couldn't answer my calls or text messages. I had no idea until last Monday that she hadn't even looked at our chat record for 2 entire months. I was yelling at her, saying I needed to be a better husband, that I wasn't doing enough for her. I got so angry that I grabbed my phone, opened the chat log, and shoved it in her face. I showed her the text messages and the evidence. She rarely raises her voice, but I yelled at her, telling her that when I needed her the most, she ignored me. She pulled out her phone and stared at it, then left the house for a couple of hours. When she came back, she apologized but continued to lie, claiming she had a hard day at work and didn't notice my calls or messages. The truth was, she ignored them because she was too busy with her boss at my house. From that day until now, I've been monitoring her phone, laptop, and iPad. I realized I could access everything from one of her old phones. I've been installing cameras in the house as well. They were ready yesterday for anyone who asked, but I wasn't in the right mindset to write about it then. I'm still not, but I need to get it off my chest. I woke up, got out of bed, and left the house to get some breakfast while waiting for her to go to work. I rented a truck, went home, and changed the locks. My friend and her husband came over with another friend, and we packed up our things and loaded all the bedroom furniture I had bought as a wedding gift, my sofa, my dining table, all the furniture she had desecrated. We took everything to a storage unit. I stuffed her clothes into garbage bags. I was going to wash her laundry, but my friend wouldn't let me. We finished around 11 a.m. around lunchtime. I bought flowers and chocolates and went to her workplace. I handed her the flowers and sweets, gave her a big hug, and kissed her. She looked sick and blushed. Her coworkers cooed, "That's so sweet." I told her I'd love to take her to lunch, but I needed to check on my leg. I also told her not to make any plans for the evening because I wanted to give her a night she'd remember for a long time. I kissed her goodbye and left. At this point, I'm going to start referring to the general manager as Tom. As I was leaving, I saw Tom. I gave him a big smile and said, "Hello, Tom. How are you?" I waved at him and went to lunch. At 2 p.m., an officer arrived at my wife's workplace to serve her the divorce papers. At that same time, I was standing in front of Tom's house. I sent her a text with the photo I took the day I discovered them. I also took a selfie in front of her house and sent it to her. I knocked on the door, and Mrs. Tom opened it. I knew a bit about the parties and gatherings from my wife's workplace, so I told her that my wife and her husband were having an affair. She didn't believe me until I showed her the first picture I took and a selfie of them together on my couch. She slapped me, but I stood there as she broke down in tears. I handed her a USB flash drive with everything related to my wife and her husband. I told her that my wife was cheating on me with several men and advised her to get tested for STDs. I also gave her my lawyer's card and my number. She then asked me why I was doing this for her. To be honest, I wasn't sure myself. I knew I had hurt her quite a bit, and I felt like the biggest jerk for doing so. I told her she had a right to know, but I felt terrible giving her that answer as I left. That's when my phone started blowing up. I didn't answer any calls or text messages, I simply went home. When I arrived, I changed my Facebook status to divorced. I started reading my wife's text messages. "What's up? What are you doing?" I sent her a message telling her she could come to the house at 7 p.m. not a minute before, to get her clothes. Apparently, her boss didn't tell her what I did right away, as I imagine he had his own problems at the time. But my wife sent me a text a little later claiming that he had told her, so he did eventually tell her. My friend, who was covering for my wife, I'll call her Amber, started calling me, so I responded. I asked her how long she had known about my wife and her boss having an affair. Please don't lie to me, I said. She replied that she had known the whole time, even before my wife and I met. All this time, I was the second choice. My whole marriage had been a bad joke. Let me tell you, that's a pretty bitter pill to swallow. I asked her why she hadn't told me. She replied that she thought I would get violent or something. I told her she knew me better than that. She said she kept it a secret because my wife was her friend. What about me? I asked. Wasn't I your friend too? I then asked her if she would want me to tell her if I knew her husband was cheating on her, that as a friend, I would be obligated to let her know something she should know. She said yes, so I hung up and sent her the pictures my wife had taken with her boss. I also texted her my lawyer's number and told her that my lawyer said everything I knew. Then I told her never to communicate with me again. At about 4 p.m., my wife showed up at the house and found out that the locks had been changed. She started knocking on the door and screaming. I did not respond. She tried calling again, but I had turned off the doorbell. She then broke a window and left around 7 p.m., just as 2 police officers parked in front. One of them was someone who had helped me move things earlier. His wife showed up, and so did my friend. It was 7 p.m. when my wife finally returned. She looked quite distressed, and I was sure she and Amber had argued. I handed her her clothes, the suspect's key, and the address, along with my lawyer's card. I told her that all contact with me would be through my lawyer. My wife started with the usual lines. I love you. We can work this out. I'm sorry. I love you. It was a mistake. They didn't mean anything. I don't love them. I simply pointed to my lawyer's card. She insisted that it was her house too, and I couldn't kick her out like this. I told her it was my house and that she had made a mistake that cost her everything. That's when she became very angry. The conversation quickly devolved into hate and insults. The officers turned on their lights, and the neighbors started gathering to watch the drama unfold. I remained calm, arms crossed, while she continued yelling at me. I suspected she might have been drinking. She then started crying, saying she had nowhere to go, and when I told her I didn't care, I learned something new about my wife. She can throw a good right hook. She left me with a split lip and a bleeding nose, but I didn't react. I just stood there and let her do it. She then tried to scratch my face, but the officers restrained her. I refused to press charges and simply asked them to make her leave. They filled out an incident report so I could get a restraining order. In hindsight, I'm glad they did. After she left, I went back inside, and as I was cleaning up, all the emotions I should have been feeling for the last 2 months hit me at once. I'm pretty exhausted right now. I thought I would feel better after getting everything out, but I don't. I'm not someone prone to tears, but I've been crying a lot since last night. I have almost 600 unanswered text messages and calls on my phone, and they keep increasing. I'm planning to go to North Carolina with some mutual friends. I don't want anyone to try to mediate things right now. I'll deal with that later. I didn't call my son last night, even though I always do. I'll tell him everything tonight. He probably won't be too upset. He never had a strong bond with her. Today, I met with her and her lawyer. I didn't get everything I wanted, but I got enough. We signed an uncontested divorce, which will be finalized in about 2 months. The good news is that I feel some relief about this, but I'm also really sad about the whole situation and the things she did. She didn't look at me during most of the proceedings. I won't pretend to know what was going through her mind, but I like to think that she didn't have the courage to look me in the eye. She hired a decent lawyer, who knew he had been handed a losing case. They asked if reconciliation was possible, but it wasn't. We asked her to fully disclose everything she had done. I had already asked her to write it down. However, what she wrote was less than what I already knew. I read what she wrote, and conveniently, the 2 men I didn't know about weren't included. My lawyer then showed her pictures from the camera footage and began questioning her. My lawyer showed her the pictures from the camera footage and started questioning her. Who is this guy? And who is this other guy? She wasn't very forthcoming with answers. We were asked to leave the room, so we stepped out. I couldn't hear every word clearly, but it was evident that the lawyer wasn't happy. When we returned, I got a more complete version of the story. The 2 men were people she had met online. Recently, she had rekindled her affair with the general manager, let's call him Food, which had been going on for almost the entire time I've known her. She claimed she broke things off with him sometime after I proposed to her and that the affair didn't resume until about a year after we got married. I think I believe her, though, in truth, I shouldn't believe anything she says at this point. I asked if she had been faithful during our marriage. She admitted she started sleeping with FP, the husband of my coworker Amber, on July 4, 2019. We had a 4th of July barbecue, and she had sex with him in our house while I was there. She said she didn't love him, that he was just a rebound. Over the next year, her desire grew, and she began dating random guys she met on online sites. I'm pretty sure she probably had some encounters at the gym too, but it was too much for me to press further. I asked the lawyers to give us a moment alone because I wanted to ask her some private questions. They left. I asked her why. Why did she cheat on me? Why did she marry me? Why didn't she just say no? She said she loved me. Great way to prove it, I replied. She said she wanted to get married, she wanted security, and I was good in bed. But she had been in love with Food for 10 years. He wasn't going to leave his wife, and her biological clock was ticking, so I was her backup plan. Basically, she said I made her happy, but she wanted what she wanted. For those who asked, both she and FP were fired from their jobs. Amber caused a huge scene at work, but not me. I don't need to make a fuss over anything. My future ex-wife is now living with her parents. I don't know what Food and Mrs. Food are doing, and they told me it's none of my business. I think he's trying to stay married, and if he does, he may have to confront me. I asked her if there was anything else I should know. She told me she had an abortion 2 years ago because she didn't know who the father was. That hit me hard. We had been trying to have a child, but we chose to stop trying and just enjoy the intimacy. I would have loved to have another child, especially a daughter to spoil. We had unprotected intimacy almost daily, so there's a good chance that child was mine, but I'll never know. That revelation was enough to make me get up and leave. You could say I dodged a bullet, but all I can think about is that she might have killed my child. She could tell me she started the Chicago fire, and I wouldn't be surprised. I called the lawyers, and they told me we would implement Plan B. Plan B was to remove my demand for alimony from the table. I wanted a contested divorce settlement, signed as soon as possible. Let's just say condition 2 for me to agree was that she undoes all those affairs, which, of course, is impossible. But there's no point in playing games here. I won't lie. Learning about the abortion has hit me hard. I don't want a monthly reminder of this woman, not even in the form of a paycheck. So, at 5:43 p.m., she signed. In approximately 2 months, it will be official. I will keep my home, my retirement funds, and all my property. There will be no alimony for either of us. She will get $73,000 of our savings. She will never communicate with me again, and we're done. I don't care what happens to her now. I don't want to know what she'll do, and I don't care about her well-being or that of anyone she knows. In the future, I hope she sees a therapist, but I've stopped worrying about her. A huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I've been through a terrible experience, and it's left a bad taste in my mouth. I haven't had anything to be happy about for 3 months, and I'm not happy now. I don't see happiness in my future at all. The abortion has been on my mind ever since she mentioned it, and I think it will be there for a long time. I don't know what I'm going to do in the immediate future or in the long term. Maybe when this is all over, I'll feel some kind of release. I don't know. Right now, I just want to be left alone, no more sympathy, no more I'm sorry to hear that, or anything else. At this moment, I only want peace. I've been thinking about everything I've done, and all I see are the places where I went wrong, not where I got it right. I know it's a terrible mentality, but it's all I have left. All I can say is that, at least this time, I was able to keep my belongings. But I will never go through this again. The decree arrived in the mail today. The snowfall slowed things down a bit. Interestingly, I am neither happy nor sad about this. Some friends wanted to celebrate, but I never felt that a situation like this was a reason to celebrate. In fact, I feel a little numb. I'm sure it will hit me later. Out of nowhere, she called me today. The divorce is final. I guess what's done is done. So I answered. She's more broken than I am. I wasn't disappointed.